just gonna wait until more people come on, but this is so exciting. Can everyone? Perfect. So I guess we can kind of go over some like housekeeping things. So first, I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight. Oh my god, I just dropped on myself. It's so awkward. Okay. My name is Talia Benducci. I will be senior this year at Rampo High School. And we're going to hear the experiences of 9 women tonight. Before we begin, here are some things. This is in webinar format, so you should be able to hear and see me, but I cannot hear or see you. So if you guys have any questions, if you could put them in the Q&A box or in the chat, and we can try and get to them throughout the webinar. The second thing is that this session will be recorded. So hopefully a recording should be sent to your email after this event so you can go back and rewatch it. Once the session ended, there will be a Google form that will pop up in whatever browser window you have. Please be sure to fill that out so we can make sure that we grow from this event. The panelists are going to be broken up into groups of 2 and 3. So when you're registered to the event, you should have received a link to tonight's itinerary, but we can go over it now. First panelist will begin at 6 p.m. with Laura Herbst and Rebecca Gordy. After 20 minutes, the next set will begin with Perry Lomberg and Megan Halloran. At 6:40, there will be 3 panelists, Umang Paul, Charity Lawson, Allison Fleeson, and when the night will end with Jennifer Sparrow and Lorraine Kunz. You should have also received a link with some of their information. You guys can skim through that now or after this, and if you have any questions regarding the event or anything that the panelists do, I highly encourage you to reach out to them if their email is provided. I would like to thank all the panelists tonight for volunteering their time to talk to these young girls about their engineering profession and the opportunities of their future. I would also like to thank Mrs. Lisa Martone for working with me to get this event off the ground, and Linnell Bala for getting me through this with her kind words of encouragement throughout the entire Gold Award process. Finally, I would like to thank my volunteers who have helped me since around January, who I've been bouncing ideas off of from the beginning. Alexandra, Savannah, Marie, Grace, Karina, and Jen, thank you. So we have about 10 minutes until 6 p.m. At that time, Laura Herbst and Rebecca Gordy are going to be promoted to panelists, and you guys will be able to hear their stories. Before we start, does anyone have any like preliminary questions about tonight's event or the setup or anything? Okay, so the agenda for tonight was actually in the confirmation email for your registration. It was like a Google Drive PDF link. Yeah, but we can send it afterwards if. So this was the itinerary for tonight. So at 6 o'clock, we're gonna have teachers going. And we're gonna have the engineering students at 6. And at 6:40, we're gonna have active engineers and then engineering management at 7. Oh, how did I become interested in engineering? That's a good question. So I personally became interested in engineering in high school. In my high school, we have a personalized like engineering program where all 4 years study engineering curriculum. So for my freshman year, I thought it was something interesting to get into, and I never looked back since. So I really hope that I can share that passion and love with other girls who are watching tonight.
there I am.
Hi, Miss Gordy.
Hi. Oh, there I am. Oh, wow. So how many girls are on the call?
There are about 40 people on this call right now.
Fabulous. That is awesome. So are Laura and I, is one of us going to speak first and then the other one?
Yeah.
And then I guess we'll take questions. That works.
This is so exciting.
I'm looking at the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tricky. I've never had, well, I've had the class, but there's a lot of people. Oh, let me know. Does Laura want to go first? I don't know if, can Laura hear me?
Yes.
Okay, can you hear?
Hi, Laura.
Oh,
Hi. I don't know if you can hear me. Hi.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Great.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I whatever works best. Maybe if you want to go first, I can go second. That's fine. Or
Sure. When did you graduate from college?
okay. So I graduated in 1993,
Ooh.
and I'll talk a little bit about what I did when I guess my turn comes up. But yeah.
Well, I'm happy to start whenever Talia gives me the, you know.
so you guys can introduce yourselves, say a
The
little
red
bit.
flag.
Oh, I guess I can start my video.
Oh, hello.
Oh, sorry. Hi. Sorry. I didn't know that was available. Yes.
Hi there.
So you guys can just say a little bit about yourselves, and then we can get into some of the questions. So.
Okay. I'll start. My name is Rebecca Gordy, and I went to Stevens Institute of Technology, and I went there the third year after the school started accepting women. So my graduating class at Stevens had 30, we started with 42 women. I think I wound up graduating with 38 out of a class of 304. So we were definitely in the minority, and that posed a whole set of interesting situations, which maybe are for another Zoom conversation. But I loved going there. I loved the engineering education. And before my sophomore year, they started offering minors, because Stevens is typically, now it's a little more diverse, but at the time I was going, I graduated in 1982. So from 78 to 82, it was still very much science and engineering. And they had started marketing, but it was considered like very nouveau, you know. So I took a literature concentration, and that was my, like, you know, my left brain relaxation class. And I loved it. So I have a major in the way that Stevens works. I have a Bachelor of Engineering with a major in chemical engineering and a minor in literature. And I never worked as a chemical engineer. I graduated in 1982 when there was a huge recession. And I actually found that my engineering education allowed me to get an entry-level job in an accounting area. So I was able to take that class and started working as a financial analyst. From there, became interested in securities. Then I was trained as a back office supervisor to support trades on Wall Street, which is a brutal job. Again, conversation for another time. And as I worked there, I realized I really wanted to do something more technical. Went to work in IT, and when I stopped working for my first career, I was a project manager for a private consulting company in Boston. Fabulous job. When my youngest daughter started high school, I decided that I love chemistry, wanted to do something with my chemistry career, so I got a degree in education, and I started teaching, and I've never looked back. I love it. And what I would say is that everything you learn in engineering school, you use. You really use in so many different aspects of your life. Absolutely amazing. So any questions? Well, Laura, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing, Rebecca. That was great. And I think we do bring different experiences that maybe as women earlier than everybody attending that maybe you're not going to experience because so many women have gone before. But my background is I have a bachelor's in chemical engineering. I grew up in Virginia, and I went to the University of Virginia. And my experience was, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into engineering because at that time I thought engineers could build things out of wood and metal, and I didn't think I could do that. But during my first semester in college, I found out about chemical engineering, and I thought, oh, I love it. I liked chemistry and I really liked math. And I switched over to the engineering school, and it was a really nice fit for me. Personally, I liked being in the engineering school. Unlike Rebecca, at the University of Virginia, there were actually quite a lot of women. I think it was 25% of the engineering school was women. And then in chemical engineering, we had about 35 students my year.
Many more women.
Yeah, and in chemical engineering, 50%. We actually had one more woman than a man in my engineering undergrad.
God, that's so awesome.
Yeah. And then I realized that I didn't necessarily want to work with chemicals. We went on some manufacturing tours, and it didn't seem safe, how strong chemical smells. So I decided I wanted to work in food, and I got a master's in food science from Penn State. And then I worked for Kraft Foods in Chicago. And I actually did work as an engineer, but also as a food scientist. And one thing about Kraft Foods is there were a ton of women that worked there. So actually my boss was a woman, her boss was a woman. I worked with 6 women and 3 men. So I've always been in a really nice fit, working, but I really did like the engineering job that I did. And then after we have 2 children, I went part-time, and then I decided that it was going to be hard to make that work in every family. And you'll figure that out as a woman, how you're going to do that. And I'd always wanted to do teaching. I have a twin sister, like Talia's older sister, I think, has a twin sister too. Yeah. And that's how I know Talia. Her sister is a student at Delaware Valley University, where I teach food science.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So I got into teaching. I had a sister that had been teaching at the community college, and it was a really nice fit for me. So I really enjoy teaching, and we'll get into that. But I like teaching the engineering. I feel really comfortable teaching that part of food science, but then food science is really broad. So I'm always learning new things. So.
Great. Thank you guys so much for being here tonight. So I'm gonna just hop into some of the questions here. So first off, how would you describe the type of person who makes a good engineering student?
Laura, you go first.
Okay.
First
okay. Let's see. So for me personally, if someone who likes math and generally does maybe a little bit above average in math, that's going to be somebody who's probably going to like engineering. also, if you can really dive into a project, and a lot of engineers are usually detail oriented or committed to completing projects, that would be another characteristic I think of engineers. And then the last thing is I do think it's a practical degree. So if you're looking to graduate and have an earning job, that is, something that's going to work for you as an engineer.
I also think, I totally agree with everything you said. I also think that there's a curiosity that engineers have. Like, how does it work? How do I do that?
Yes.
How can I, because that for me was the driving force for studying engineering. How does this work? How do they get that? And I still, have that curiosity. So I think that's really important that you have that curiosity about figuring out how things work or how you make things. Detail oriented, absolutely meticulous. Gotta love the math. So much math.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely, I agree. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Persistent also.
Mm-hmm.
I think, engineers, because a lot of times as an engineer, you're problem solving. So there's a certain kind of dog with a bone mentality that you have to have, or you should have really, because, you will be tasked with figuring things out and making things better, making things work. So definitely you should have a certain level of persistence.
Yes, I agree. And problem solving is really a big part of engineering, but as a high school student, I didn't necessarily really experience that. I didn't know if I could solve problems or not. But once I was in the college environment and you get into some of your sophomore level classes, it's introduced to you and you're like, ooh, this is sort of fun. And there is a sort of a fun piece to it. And that, it sort of clicks. So if you don't know if you really like to solve problems, you will be given opportunities to try it out, and it could be a good fit.
Yeah. So what made you guys go into teaching?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I actually, the way I went into teaching was my kids suggested it. When we were talking about getting back into because I was working at home. I was doing a lot of volunteering work and a lot of fundraising, that kind of thing. But when I decided that I wanted to go back and have a career, my kids were the ones who suggested that I teach. And I wasn't sure if I was even going to be good at it. But I found that I really enjoyed not only sharing chemistry, but also sharing different experiences that I had and my curiosity about things. I love to see students get excited about things. And so I really wanted to share my enthusiasm for learning, really.
Great, that is wonderful. I think similarly, after I worked for full time for I think 8 years, and then I had a family, and I was looking for something part time. In my particular relationship, that was going to work for my husband and I, and I was able to get this opportunity to teach part time food engineering, and I had always thought about teaching, and I really like connecting with the students. And Rebecca, you probably connect too, but like getting to know the students and find out more about them and what they're interested in, and learning even from the students because they'll share things. But the other piece of teaching is you're always learning something new, and that curiosity is it's fun. It's fun to learn new things, and
Yes.
It's fun to be with students in a classroom teaching. And one of the things about Delaware Valley University is we do a lot of hands-on work. So we're always applying whatever we're talking about. And that's a fun environment to teach in. So I like that.
Yeah, that's the best. I always enjoy when my students get to put anything into practice. I wish, but there are other classes other than mine that let them do that. But I really want to incorporate more of that in my class.
So what experiences from your engineering do you guys try to instill in your students or teach them?
I forget. Laura, you can go first.
Oh, okay. So, you know, the problem solving that we talked about before, and it can be a little nebulous, I think, as a high school student, what that really looks like. But as I said before, that's a big part of your job, and it can be fun. So when I teach food science, food engineering, we do a lot of problem solving. The other thing that's fun, and maybe Rebecca can talk to this too, is I am a scientist too. So the whole idea of running experiments is something I try to instill in the students. And the excitement to that piece is in high school, you're sort of directed to run this experiment, or you might, it's not like your own, you don't own it. But once you get out, start working, and nobody knows what the answer is, so you're working on something new, and you're working through that, that can be a really exciting opportunity. So we do a little bit of that in college, where students will own the project, and then you don't really know how it's going to turn out. And that whole learning process it's this, you know, it can be fun, just like problem solving can be fun. They're sort of tied together. So
I absolutely agree. I think for me, the biggest thing that I want to pass on to my students and hope they take away from my class is the ability to break down problems from a big problem into a bunch of little problems. That is a trait or something that is really, really important for students to learn, because a lot of times when you're given a project, even now, you know, starting in middle school, you're given a project and it can be very overwhelming until you start breaking it down. And in work, I mean, when I used to work and you're given this huge project, and you know, the first thing you do is you break it down until you break it down and you can do each part. And so there's less anxiety. There's more of a sense of what has to go after what. So by doing that with my students, and this is something that they can apply in anything. And I think that that's the most important thing that I can impart to my students, is the ability to break down tasks from big tasks into smaller bite-sized tasks.
I think I agree with you. I think that's a skill that you will need when you go to college and you're out working, is to be able to break it down. That is a good point. I agree.
Okay, so those are all the prepared questions that I had, but there are a couple in the Q&A box.
Ooh.
So someone said that I only have a B- in my algebra class, but do you still think I could be an engineer even though I'm not an A+ student?
Yeah, I never want to say to a student, oh, you can't do something. It's just a matter of, you know, how much you get out of it, how much you're willing to put into it. Rebecca, you can add.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you like math, so there are some topics in math that you're better at than others. I mean, I know definitely that was for me. I loved differential equations in college, and some of my fellow students, you know, ran screaming from them. So there's definitely different maths that are going to be a stronger, you know, you're going to be stronger in than others. But if you like math and you're willing to work at it, then I would not discourage you from pursuing an engineering degree.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree. I think that if you really just, like you said, that hunger, that passion before, that curiosity for it, I don't think that you need to be A+, but that's me.
No, yeah. Totally.
Someone asked, how do you guys feel about failure?
Oh, who hasn't failed? I mean, failing a class or failing at something you attempt to do? Can you be more specific?
Um,
I as I get older and older, I appreciate failure. I think, you know, if you're a type of person that, you know, you always want to be successful, it can be hard and it maybe prevent you from trying things. But as I get older, you know, failure is important, and you gotta, you know, I had this boss one time, and he, instead of like looking for blame, he would always say, "Here's an opportunity," and I would be like, "Whoa, this is brand new thinking for me. This is an opportunity," and it really is. And if you have management that can move forward with you in that respect, it's a wonderful work environment. So you can actually learn a lot from failure.
I know that, especially when you're building something new.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, typically when you're building something new, you don't succeed the first time. And I've learned more from my failures than from my successes, I have to say, because it forces you to look at what you're doing again, look at your theory again, look at your math again. So it reinforces what you're learning.
Yes.
And
I
don't
agree.
think of it as failing. Think of it as opportunities to learn.
Yes. And you do. You
Yeah.
think, oh, there's not more to learn, but there's always more to learn. And you
There's
realize,
always
oh, I really need to know this. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So someone said, what do you think is the most common misconception of engineering?
I grew up thinking, oh, engineering is not for me because I'm a woman and I'm not building stuff and I don't do that. And that was a breakthrough moment to think, oh, no, engineering is fine for me because it's how you think and it's how you solve problems and manage projects and break things up. And, you know, I love that. And so that was a misconception for me as a woman that, oh, this wasn't a good fit. But there's other misconceptions out there too. But
I agree. My perception of an engineer was a mechanical engineer.
yes, yes. Yes.
That was in my mind what an engineer was. Anything related to chemistry, I did not associate with engineering. So that was a revelation. And actually, my oldest daughter has an engineering degree.
Okay.
She has a systems engineering degree. So she specialized in optimization, and which was fascinating to me. And she is now working as a software consultant. She decided to go that route because she got very interested in programming. So she's working in that field right now. So
That sounds interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So that actually takes us just about to our time limit. So I'm gonna promote our next two panelists.
Well, I
But
just
thank
wanted to
you.
say thank you. And if anybody has questions, you know, I would love to
absolutely.
answer. Do not be afraid to just reach out and, you know.
Absolutely. Likewise, questions. I ask Talia, I love to give advice and answer questions. So my email is always open.
Thank you guys so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, so these are our next two panelists. This is Megan Halloran and Perry Womber. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves, say a little bit about yourselves?
I can go first. So my name is Perry. I'm an electrical engineer. I finished my undergraduate degree in 2018 and started working full-time at Draper, which is where I currently work. And Draper had me work part-time, sometimes full-time, for my master's degree, which is so hot off the press, I don't even think they've mailed me the degree yet. I finished about 2 weeks ago, so yay. I'm so glad to be done. The last few classes were really tough. I work in something called instrumentation electronics, which gives a lot of different opportunities. I think what my department specifically is for, we do a lot of sensor integration electronics. There's a lot of math involved. There's a lot of calculus. Just to kind of rebut what the teacher said in the last one, I was never a good math student. I'm definitely that B- math student, but like here I I have a degree in electrical engineering.
I'm Megan Holleran. I go to Stevens Institute of Technology as well. I just finished my second year, so I'm a 5-year student though. I'm part of the co-op program, which is an alternating semester. Like this upcoming fall, I'll be working at like an internship, and I'm working there currently. So I'm doing summer, fall there, and then I'll do classes in the spring. And then again the next fall I'll be doing an internship, so it rotates like that, and I just end up doing an extra year. And I'm a biomedical engineer. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was a co-op student too. I went to Northeastern.
Okay. That's awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. So what made you guys interested in engineering, or like what introduced you to engineering?
You can go.
I went first on the last one. You can go.
Well, I always liked science. I was not as much into math as well. And then in high school, it definitely picked up. Like I enjoy math now. I would put myself in that category, but also never got A's in math. Like, not ashamed to say it. But it definitely taught me that I had to work for, like my grades and everything. Like even in high school, like I wasn't really the type of kid that just like got A's. So once I got to say like junior or senior year, like later in high school, I always knew I wanted to do something in STEM, but I had no idea what. And at first I was thinking more biology. I really liked like the medical side of things. I wasn't really as much into like the mechanical, structural type of engineering. And then I have an older brother who went to Stevens as well, and he suggested it to me. And at the time, biomedical, and it still is growing really quickly, but I didn't know what it was. I had never heard of it. And it included anything I thought was interesting. It was, I personally have like an interest in like stem cell therapy. There's a lot of 3D printing that's really cool. Just really innovative medical, inventions that really fit everything I thought was interesting in engineering. Yeah, and so he suggested that to me probably like my junior year of high school, and from there I played softball in college, and I was looking at schools a little bit earlier for that. So from there I just contacted Stevens, and it went pretty quickly from there.
Yeah, and so I decided I also thought that I was very interested in science, as I wanted to be like a research scientist, maybe a little more on the biology side. But then my friends convinced me to join the robotics team in high school, which I really loved. And I did the wiring for, so that was sort of my first electrical experience. And then a certain high school robotics coach and Ramapo physics teacher said that electrical engineering was the hardest major. So obviously I had to take that challenge. And that's not a good reason to pick your major, but that's kind of where that idea came from for me. And then in the first month of college, we had to go to different like lab tours for the different engineering majors. And in the electrical engineering one, we built a circuit that was 2 sets of coiled wires, and like basically without connecting a battery, you used inductive coupling. So you might have learned about inductors in physics class, to like turn on an LED light. And I just thought that was the coolest thing. And I had to learn how it worked. So that's really why I picked it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that aha moment, like that, wow, like that's what I want to do. But what advice would you say that you have girls who are looking for engineering? And is there anything easier that makes coming out of college or in college? Is there anything you found that makes it easier being a female engineer?
I have, like, especially in my early career now, and so this helped me through my master's, but I did actually work with this group at Draper as a student. I was a co-op student there, and I stayed on part-time for the last year of my degree in undergrad. And I have like the best support network, and like people who truly, I think, are invested in my success. And so if you can find a mentor or find someone who really wants you to succeed, I think that just gives you the confidence to succeed, but also a resource for when you're worried that you might not. Because like, right, all the classes that I'm taking now, like my boss has taken them, and like the people I work with have all taken them. So they can help me and support me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, back to what I guess before, there was definitely like less women in engineering, and that's, I mean, totally still is today. But I think that I think being a female, like at least for me, I've noticed like I have a little bit different of a work ethic than most of the guys around me, and um, like working on projects and like things, you have to remember that like you're always bringing something to the table, and you might think of it a different way and it might like come out different when you say it, but like I've always like I guess I'm saying like never hold back what you're thinking, and always just like say what you're thinking, because like doubting myself has definitely been a huge part of like the transition from high school to college. Like any doubts that I've made, I've ended up going through with, I never regretted. So and also, yeah, like you were saying, like use your support system. I think like anyone, like my coaches, my teachers, my fellow students, like my friends, everyone is like totally there to help you. A lot of my friends that have taken the same classes as me previously have been like so much more than willing to help. So like the support system is definitely like really there.
Yeah, I'll just say, you reminded me, like the girls in my year, the year older than me and the year below me, I am so close to. Like I have so many more friends who are women now in a program with very few women than I feel like I did in any other point in my life, because like you got each other's back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that a support group, like you guys said, is really important, especially like you are technically like a minority in the field, and I think that it's kind of like a little sisterhood. So that's all the questions I have prepared for you guys, but I guess we can open it up to the Q&A box. Someone says, what classes, particularly math, would you suggest to prepare for engineering in college?
I mean, you'll take all the classes that you need in college. I took senior year in high school, I took like what AP Calc AB, so that's like Calculus 1, and then I retook it my freshman fall. I did not take those credits, and I must say, like if you're thinking about taking an AP class like calculus, just retake it your freshman fall. Like just all the material. You'll just be like one class that you can take and like not stress about.
I did the same thing. Yeah. I feel like freshman year I was definitely really prepared, like because I had already taken calculus 1, so like it was like, yeah, definitely made it less stressful, like going in like a little more confident.
And if you want to do a little bit of programming, like you don't need to, but it might be nice. Pick up like, I don't know, like Python or something. It'll help you out.
Yeah.
Do that.
Did you guys find that there was any flexibility in scheduling? Like would you be able to take non-related engineering classes during college?
Yes and no.
Yeah, I think it's dependent on your school too. Like I'm like Stevens isn't that big of a school, so schedule and like physically it's a small space. Like there's not a lot of class options, so scheduling is always tight. But you definitely can, like if you want to make it work, like you can make it work. I don't know. I guess it just depends on where you are, I guess.
Yeah, I like almost got a theater minor, which was, just sort of some classes I took for fun. Something I didn't do well at the beginning of my degree, and I think did better towards the end, was I didn't use my general electives wisely. use them for something you will like truly and genuinely enjoy and will exercise your brain in different ways than your engineering classes do.
Totally. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, like, your time is precious. Like, use it how you want it. Someone asked specifically, has there been any coding that you had to learn, like JavaScript or Python, and were they hard? She was looking to go into computer science and engineering.
You can go. Yeah.
I mostly program in MATLAB, which is like very easy. It's like writing in English. I do a little bit of Python here and there. It's also like not super difficult. I did JavaScript at one of my internships. See, the thing about programming is sort of when you're going to take Intro to Computer Science, I saw the questioner said, you're going to learn like how to structure code. You're going to learn the fundamental things. And then the difference between languages is just like you Google the syntax to figure out how it's written. Once you know how to code, learning different languages is not like the hard thing.
Yeah, I think freshman year, one of our like introductory classes was like your intro to programming. We did C++. And at first, I think it was, I had never coded or anything along those lines before. So it was very like overwhelming at first because I was like, I am not a computer science major. I don't know what I'm doing. But it's like kind of addicting. Like it gets fun, you know, like, and I think if you can kind of geek out a little bit and like just like get into it for like a little bit of time, like I really enjoyed it, and like I didn't even know what I was doing. So by the end of it, I left like the intro class like wanting to take another class. Like I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I know a lot of my friends who are good at programming like do a lot of personal projects on it. So just pick a language and like pick a project, look up, either come up with some cool idea or look up some ideas that other people have done and just kind of learn it, having fun, being flexible about it.
Yeah, and if you really have a passion for it, there are definitely a lot of like online resources that you can learn from.
For sure.
And someone asked if I don't like coding, is engineering still an option?
Yes.
Totally.
Yeah.
There's so many different types of engineering. Like when I code for my job, I code to make my life easier. Like I could do everything by hand or I could write a code to do it faster. I know some people who just decide to do it by hand because they really hate to code. You don't need it.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna probably need it. I mean, it's one of those things that's a great tool to have, but yeah, I totally agree. You don't need it and you don't need to love it. Engineering stretches pretty far.
I think Talia froze.
Yeah. She's oh,
All right.
wait, I think she's coming back.
Megan, what's been your most rewarding experience on a co-op?
My most rewarding experience. So I'm on my second co-op right now. That's rewarding. I just really like feeling like I'm part of like a working environment, even though I'm not like out of college. Like it's just cool to see like the business side of engineering, you know, like I don't know, you don't see that in school, you know, you see like the technical, the math, the science, but like actually seeing like the production level engineering is really cool, and like seeing everything like fit together like a big puzzle. I like that. Oh, I have a question. Stevens does offer minors, yeah. I was thinking about doing a philosophy minor. That's my quest right now.
I feel like philosophy and engineering is like a good.
Yeah.
Especially if you do like biomedical stuff, right? There's definitely
some moral questions in there.
Do you guys want to talk about like how the co-op program works, or like how you guys got into it, or why you picked the co-op program?
Yeah, I think Megan kind of explained how it worked for her. It worked the exact same way for me. I ended up graduating still in 4 years. And I only did that because my last co-op that I did told me that they'd hire me full time. Like if they didn't say that, I would have done a third one and stretched it out to 5 years. The disadvantage is you don't get summer vacations.
True.
That's pretty much the only one. I did an internship at a radar lab and I hated it. We'll get back to that. I worked at iRobot, which makes the Roomba. And I managed the first fleet of Terra, which is their lawnmower robot. Like I was just in charge of all 30 of those as an intern. And then I worked at Draper, where I currently work with the group I currently work, and like just totally fell in love with it. And now I actually, if any of you are looking for co-ops in the future, I hire electrical engineering co-ops. So come work for me one day.
I think, I mean, I'm not sure, but I think that from people I know, the co-op program is pretty like rare. Like I don't know a ton of people that have it at their school at least. But like I think it's like a really cool advantage too. And like all the internships for me at least are like full-time like paid internships. Like it's not like I'm just sacrificing my time.
Yeah.
And there's so much like learning, like real world learning experience you got out of it, and like so many people you meet, like you were saying you got hired like a real job from it. Like it's a really valuable thing. Yeah.
Oh, and I said I'd get back to my not liking my radar lab job. My master's is actually in applied electromagnetics with a like sort of what I'm focusing on now is developing radar technology. So I didn't like it then, but I really love it now. I came back to my roots. But it was like finding out what you don't like on a co-op is just as important as finding your job on your co-op. Like just getting it done within 6 months and being like, this was not the right environment for me, or I didn't have the type of support that I'm looking for in my career. Like work at a startup for 6 months and figure out if you like working at a startup. Work at, someone mentioned in the Q&A, working at Raytheon. Raytheon hires so many interns. Like work at a big company like Raytheon for 6 months, figure out if that's the right environment for you. Find your little Goldilocks position.
Yeah, definitely. Someone said I want to combine my love of animals with engineering. And I think that if you do your research, honestly, like you can find some way to incorporate it. I'm sure there's marine engineering and there's nautical engineering, which is like boats and things. But I would definitely see like do your research of like where your degree can take you.
Yeah, so Draper, I know, does a lot of sort of like a pet project thing for the company, partners with the New England Aquarium. Draper is in Cambridge. I live in Boston. And they like track where microplastics are in the ocean. Some engineers develop some stuff like that. So, you know, there's opportunities available. I don't know a ton about it. It's not what I do. But like you can use engineering for anything.
Definitely. How large are your work teams?
Oh, it depends. Like a lot. Right now I'm working on one project with 3 engineers and one project with 90 engineers.
Yeah, that like sums it up, I think. Totally depends. I mean, you're rarely working alone, if that helps. Like, there's always people to pick your brain and you can pick theirs.
Yeah, even on a project with 3 people, like there's still engineers around. You can still talk to other people about your work, even if they're not working on like the same thing as you. And that's nice when you talk to someone, either like a classmate who's taking different classes from you or on a different like internship as you, and they have a little distance from the problems you're trying to solve and can offer a different perspective.
Yeah, so that takes us to the end of this time, but thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it, and I hope the people learn something new.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, I think my email's in the doc.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Talia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi. Hello.
How are you guys? So you guys can just kind of introduce yourselves, say a little bit about what you do.
Okay, who wants to go first?
Go for it, Allison.
Okay. All right. So, hi, I'm Allison Fleeson. I came to engineering a little bit different than most people. I actually have a bachelor's in fine art in photography. I graduated in 1999. After doing freelance photography for for 2 years, I decided that freelancing wasn't for me, and I actually started working. I started working as a temp admin, like administrative assistant, for a company, and got hired at a construction site. At the construction site, I had the site was in Hoboken. It was at the Hoboken Ferry Terminal for New Jersey Transit, and I was working for Tishman Construction. At the site, I had a boss that I don't know, seemed to really like me, like working with me, and he became kind of a mentor. And so towards the end of the project, we had to kind of let people go, and I asked if I could be of help out on the site. So this is a construction site, and so I started kind of helping out on the construction site, doing punch list work and other work on site that normally would have been done by an inspector. And from there, project after project, I kind of increased the things that I did. And then sometime around 2012, I decided to go back to school. So I went back to school for civil engineering at NGIT. I was able to go with a master's program with their kind of bridging program, where I could take some of the classes that I obviously didn't have in art school, as well as new civil engineering classes. My specialty was so it was civil engineering with a specialty in construction management. Tishman is a construction manager and / GC. I still was with the same company, Tishman, and still kind of on and off working with the same boss, kind of working from one project to the next, going kind of increasing my responsibilities with every project. So what started out, I was in Hoboken for like 5 years, doing a maintenance building in the rail yard, and that became the ferry terminal, where we actually opened up the ferry terminal that was originally opened up in 1907, hadn't been open since the 1960s. And even in that project, I became a project manager for the marine barges on that project. And I kind of have just gone from project to project, increasing, like I said, my responsibilities. The last couple projects I've been on have been the Waldorf Astoria rehabilitation, and I was on the Tappan Zee Mario M. Cuomo project. I've done things from quality assurance, project management, field engineering, a little bit of everything in the construction site realm. And that's pretty much it. It started, like I said, like 19 years ago, and just kind of grew from there.
Great. I guess I'll go. So, hi, my name is Umang Hall. I'm a biomedical engineer. I work at a company called Becton Dickinson, or BD, in Franklin Lakes. It's a medical device company. I started out as a chemical engineer, actually. Someone kind of mentioned it, that I was into engineering, and I actually wanted biochemical engineering because I was really into pharmaceuticals and kind of mass production of drugs and things like that. couldn't find a biochemical engineering program back when I was looking for colleges. And so I went into chemical engineering. And then halfway through, I went to Vanderbilt University, which is in Tennessee. And it's actually known mostly for its law, business, and liberal arts, but they have an engineering program. But I chose it because it kind of gave me a balanced look at things. But they were really getting their biomedical engineering program off the ground, and it had gained a lot of momentum and was one of the few in the country at the time, it and Hopkins and such. So I looked at biomedical engineering and learned that it basically breaks the body up into systems, chemical systems, mechanical systems, electrical systems, and that really resonated with me. And so that's where I went into that, and I did a lot of work on genetics and plasma transfer, so I got to have that connection to the bioreactors and things that I never did. I never would have otherwise. I also took a look at instrumentation there. So it was a lot of fun. And so I took that, and then I graduated out of biomedical, and I went into a program at BD called the Technology Leadership Development Program. It's a program that exists today, actually, and there's two versions of it. It's an engineering development program and a technology leadership development program. They're both rotational programs that actually kind of do the co-op within BD. BD is so large now that you can actually have lots of different jobs for a short amount of time, either a year or anywhere from a year to about 18 to 24 months. And so it allows you to kind of get that quick, early experience, and which was hugely beneficial to me. And I think one of the ladies just said it gives you a really great chance to try stuff out and really figure out what you don't like, which is almost more important than what you do like. So I went through the Technology Leadership Development Program, and I started working on developing blood collection sets and lots of new to BD, almost new to world devices. It was really great. And then I rotated through a lot of different programs there, and I got to look at all the different flavors of engineering. I did mechanical engineering. As a biomedical engineer, I had never touched a drawing. I had never touched CAD in my engineering program. I was so focused on the instrumentation side and the genetics. So I learned I had to pick up CAD. I had to pick up all this mechanical engineering. I was afraid of needles, and then I went to BD, which is all needles. My mom had to laugh at that one. And then I went into this one program. My next rotation was about BD ID. So it was all about RFID, scanning, coding, software validation. It was all of it. So I got to do that. And then my third rotation was down in Baltimore, where I worked on panels that were the mass production of panels that had 24 different bacteria on it, and then the 72 different ways of treating the bacteria. And it was all like these little microtiter panels. And so you could basically take a culture and put it on one panel, and it could basically identify what bacteria you might have, and then it would identify the drug that it would take to treat it. And all of that was in one system. And so that was kind of cool. I did that as my third rotation. And then ever since then, I've kind of been circling around product development. I then went into project management, quality management, business process management, and kind of as I've worked up through my years of experience, I've kind of looked at product development from all different angles as well, kind of having created my foundation in a lot of different kinds of engineering. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Okay, so my name is Charity Lawson, and I am an astronautical engineer. I do rocket science, basically. So I work for an aerospace company in Southern California. I'm going to be a little bit cagey about where, because I didn't get all the official approvals to talk about the where, since we are a defense contractor. So if you speak to me privately, I can kind of fill you in on that. But in a large forum, I kind of have to be kind of cagey. So just for proprietary and security reasons. So my decision to go into engineering started when I was about 12, 13 years old. Some of you probably don't, you probably learned this in history class more than anything else, but I remember the Challenger explosion very vividly because, I didn't watch it on TV live because I was probably the only school in the United States that didn't watch it on TV live, because I lived in this small little logging community that didn't care very much about science. But I had it taped. So I went home and I watched it, and I, got home to watch it, and I was told what I was about to see. And I followed that failure investigation, like just every little detail with my dad, what happened, why it happened, why did they launch, why did they not wait, what went wrong, and learned so much about that little O-ring. And knew that I wanted, not only did I want to get into science, but I wanted to be an astronaut. So I went to space camp. I saved my money, went to space camp 2 years. And while I was at space camp, they had German rocket scientists come and speak to us. So some of the original German rocket scientists, Konrad Dannenberg, spoke to us, and he talked to us about engineering and propulsion. And I said, not only am I going to be an astronaut, I'm going to learn how to make rocket engines, because his eyes lit up, and he just loved what he did so much. And so that's where, kind of the spark started for me. And so for me, when I decided to pick a college, my criteria was which engineering schools had the most civilian astronauts. So I knew that the military academies had the most astronauts, but I wasn't going to go into the military. So my next criteria was which civilian schools, and Purdue University had the most. It's called the Cradle of Astronauts. And so I said, I'm going to Purdue University. I did early applicant, and I knew I was admitted, and I didn't want to apply anywhere else. Boston University had offered me a scholarship, and so my mom's like, well, you have to apply there. So I did to please my mom, but I had no intention of going. So I was that person who applied really to two schools, one to make my mom happy, but I had no intention of going anywhere but Purdue. So I applied one place, got where I wanted to go, and that's where I headed. I didn't do any internships or their co-op program. I was kind of on that 4-year track, but I had a it wasn't a work study program, but it was I got a summer job with a research organization through Purdue University. And normally they use work study programs, students, but since I wasn't eligible for work study, they gave up 3 work study students to keep me because they liked what I did. But we keyworded technical documents regarding metal matrix composites to make mill standards. So I did that all 4 years of college, from my first year of summer throughout the rest of my college experience. And that kind of landed me a job right out of college, because I got a job with the company I'm at now, because I knew something about metal matrix composites. And my first job out of college was working in a propulsion systems engineering department and focusing on making composite overwrap propellant and pressure in tanks. And so the first program that I worked on was the Chandra Space Telescope, and working on those propellant tanks that are aluminum lined, thin-walled aluminum lined composite overwrap propellant tanks, and trying to get the liners to be properly welded, because it's very hard to weld aluminum. So right away, failure investigation. And I worked there for about 5 years, and then I relocated to Washington to be closer to family. And I worked for a smaller agency in Redmond, Washington. It's called Aerojet Rocketdyne now, but at the time it was General Dynamics, and then it got sold. It was formerly Primex. But we made small, tiny rocket engines. The smallest one was 0.2 of a pound of thrust, and the largest one was a bipropellant engine that's 100 pounds of thrust. So I started as a test engineer there, and then I did project engineering, which is basically the responsible design engineer for the thrusters. And then I moved into systems engineering, which is the technical requirements management for the thrusters. I was there for about 18 years, and then decided I needed a change. Well, I decided I needed to change probably sooner, but really wanted to stay in Washington to be as close to family. But once we kind of decided we were okay leaving the Washington area, this position at my current employer opened up, and they recruited me back, and it's the same employer I started out 18 years ago, or 20 some odd years ago, when I left college in 1996. So kind of came full circle, and now I'm an engineering manager, and I do some functional stuff and some programmatic stuff. So, and some of it's defense contracts. So I'm working on a program now that's a defense contract. I struggle to call it Space Force because it's not going to be Space Force for me. But it's missile defense kind of programs. But we also do James Webb Telescope. I mean, there's lots of things that we do that is also exploratory still, but lots of defense stuff too. So.
Okay, so I'm just going to jump around in some of my questions. So one of the ones that I want to ask is, do you guys feel like you're a minority in the workplace, as engineering is not typically known for being a women's field?
I'd say yes. I still feel like a minority. My construction sites have changed a lot in the 19 years since I've been there. Once upon a time, it was just me as the administrative assistant, and I was the only female anywhere that I could see. In the last, I would say, 5 years, I've seen a huge increase on sites. There's also my company Tishman has gotten involved in mentorship for women and women in engineering goals. We actually have a monthly group that meets and has discussions, as well as we have kind of a chat platform where we can all post and talk. So it's definitely increasing, but we're still pretty much a minority, and it's still, construction sites are still a big boys club. It's still pretty rough and vulgar and all the things that are stereotypical, at least on a construction site. So that's my experience.
Yeah, I work with a lot of women engineers, but I mean, I feel like I work with a lot of women, but if I look across, it's because I'm working cross-functionally. And so I work with a lot of people who are not engineers. I lead an entire team of people, and there's like 2 women right now, and I recruited them. So I didn't inherit them. So, I definitely, we try to open up opportunities and do that. I think it's definitely getting way better. Biomedical engineering was 50-50 for me, but mechanical engineering, I think, is not, which is, where I work right now, that's the primary mode, I guess, of our engineering that we're looking at, in the particular project I'm on. But yeah, I think that as you go up also in leadership, you start to see less and less women. So we've got work to do. We've made a lot of strides, but we've got work to do, I think.
So in my particular section, the propulsion and combustion section that I manage, we joke that for Halloween we can dress up as Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs because I'm the only woman. But it's not because women aren't recruited into the department. What we notice is that the women that we recruit are strong leaders, they're ambitious, and they grow really fast. So the women that joined the department 18, 20 years ago with me are now in director positions, VP positions, sub-project manager positions. And so they now report to at the staff level of the department, or they're in a manager position like me. So right now I have one other woman in the department, and she's my summer intern. So I'm wooing her to come back when she graduates. And then I'm cross-training someone from systems engineering to bring her into the department as a thruster engineer. So we actively are trying to increase our diversity. But it is hard, and it's not a pipeline. A lot of people say that diversity is a pipeline problem, but it's not really a pipeline problem because we graduate women and people of color at about 40-50%. But we have a retention problem and we have a recruiting problem. So we have programs like at my company, and I'm sure everybody else's company, we have referral bonus programs where if you refer a friend and they get hired, you get a bonus. Typically, because of implicit bias and unconscious bias, we tend to refer people who look like us. people who are like us. And so if the bulk of our working population is still white men, that's who they're going to refer. And they don't do it consciously. It's just, that's what happens. If I go to a Society of Women Engineers event or recruiting people, the company sends me or they send my boss. Maybe I can't go, so they send my boss, who is a white man. All of the male students can come to those events and they can apply for jobs. And he's going to connect more with the person who looks like him and is most like him. So he's more likely to recruit someone who looks like him. And in fact, we had a new hire come on board last year, and we were expecting an African-American man because he was recruited at the Society of African-American Engineers, or a Society of Black Engineers. I can't remember the name of the society. Yeah, I always forget. And so we're thinking, hey, look at us. We're going to be a little bit more diverse. Nope, he's not. And then they also, any amount of, your background, your heritage, you can join these groups and you can be an ally, and then you can participate in these groups. So you can't judge, but you do tend to the implicit bias. So it's not really a pipeline problem per se. It's the system is flawed in how it recruits. So, but at my company, our CEO is a woman. Our board of directors is fairly diverse and has women and people of color on it. And then we require that our panels, like whenever we hire people for certain types of positions, they have to interview a certain number of minorities for each of these positions. So assuming, that, so that requires us to make sure that we're bringing in the right kind of candidates. So I think, like you said, the problem is not solved yet, but we're working on it. And so I think when you're looking at colleges, one thing that helps is to look for colleges that have organizations like the Society of Women Engineers, because they're going to have more recruiting opportunities to get you into these companies that have good diversity programs. And that will help. And I think look for, and when you're evaluating a company as to whether or not it's going to empower you and you're going to have those good growth opportunities in that good pipeline into leadership and management, look for ones that have employees resource groups like that are funnel you into like Society of Women Engineers and other diversity groups. Because I think that helps, because like the director of my director, the assistant director, of my directorate is a woman. So we have lots of women in leadership positions, but still the cross section looks a little bit male. And the guys in my department say, well, it's because we're not ambitious. We're just content to coast.
Shooting off of that, what is one experience or piece of advice that you would like to leave with the girls tonight?
I think maybe I'll start. I had to think about this since we were thinking about it. There's I think two things, if you don't mind, that I think have really gotten me through. And one is just basing off of what Charity was just talking about, actually, is big fish, small pond, right? I feel like that might define women in engineering a bit, right? When you think, we're engineers, we're driven, we're ambitious, and we try to go, we try to go for the best and things like that. Sometimes it's important, it's not necessarily what you do. Sometimes it's that you stand out, and you are going to naturally stand out if you are, if you are that big fish in a small pond. And when I say that, I mean, it's not about where you land, it's about how you take on a position. So a lot of the stepping stones that I had in my career were me taking on the project that nobody else really wanted and making it a success. So it's like, there's not a lot of people necessarily vying for, going in and doing this whole remediation product for an entire plant because it was just drudgery, right? But I went and I took it on, and and you make it a success. And it's okay to take on those projects that aren't glamorous, because you learn no matter what you do. And you really can make a name for yourself, and you find successes, and you don't find people getting in your way and trying to stop you or trying to take glory or anything, right? You just get to go and do and finish and accomplish and prove that you can handle it. You know what I mean? And at the end of the day, that's the experience you want, and that's how you want to portray yourself. So don't be afraid of taking on those projects that nobody else wants to touch, because that's where the glory is, really. You know what I mean? At the end of the day. So that's kind of one of the things I always tell my young engineers that I'm talking about. And the other thing is, I would say, when you take on that job, take it on knowing what you're going to say about it for your next job, right? Always think about that next position, what you want from it and what you want to say about it, and how you take your entire package that you've developed and make it relevant to the next job at hand. So even if it doesn't, we're engineers, we think very methodically, step by step, one thing after the other. And sometimes you have to think outside the box a bit and be able to connect those dots for the person. If you can connect them for yourself first, take a leap, take a risk, go after it. Because again, it might be something where you're going to make a leap into something that no one else knows about, and you bring all this experience. And again, you end up being that big fish in a small pond. Right? So that's kind of what I will leave with you guys.
I think I just want to say that for me, a mentor was critical to my career. And having a good mentor that was really always in my corner, was willing to push me to do more, to educate myself more, to show me the ropes a little bit, sit there with me, spend really a lot of time with me to, he educated me as well as pushed me. And I think that was made such a difference for me. And I can't stress enough that having that great mentor, I really wouldn't be where I am. So, I have to be a big cheerleader for that. So.
I think playing off the commenting on the mentor aspect, I think having a mentor who definitely challenges you, and then I think if you can foster that mentorship into a sponsor relationship, which is where not only does that mentor teach you things, but that mentor develops you in a way that where the expectation is that you sparkle, you shine, and you grow, and you have that growth mindset set, and then they sell you to other people, and then when some task comes up, they say, oh, Talia's the person. I think she's a perfect fit for this job. And they strategically place you where they think you're a good fit, because you're going to go execute well, and you're going to make me look good, because I said Talia's a good fit for this job, and they're going to say, oh wow, Charity recommended Talia and she was a great fit for this job and she executed well. And so when I mentor people, I look for being able to develop it into a sponsorship role so that I can strategically place them in places where they make me look good and they look good. So look for those kinds of relationships as well, because those are the ones that help you step through. And then also think about being strategic, like Yuang said, and then don't be afraid to toot your own horn. This took me a long time to grasp in my career. When I would write my performance reviews and do my feedback for my performance reviews, I was always like, I would play up the entire, my role in the team, and I would celebrate the team's accomplishments, even though it was half the time, it was all me. I would say, oh, the whole team did it. But, and what ended up happening is somebody else on the team would get credit for my work because they were selling themselves and I was not selling myself. So I was giving the whole team credit. So it's okay to celebrate your success. I think as women, we tend to be raised to be courteous and kind of minimize our accomplishments to make others feel good. I certainly was raised this way, and I wasn't raised to be brave and courageous as much as I should have been. My grandfather told me to be this way, and I think when he died, I forgot to keep doing that. And you've got to do that. You have to be bold. You have to be courageous, because all of your male counterparts are told to be brave, courageous, and celebrate their success. And for them, it's so natural and it's second nature. So it's okay to toot your own horn. And if people have a problem with it, it's their problem, not yours. So be bold, be courageous. One of my managers told me that in a performance review, and I put it on a sticky note and I put it on my computer. And when I left my last job, I took it off the computer and I stuck it on my new computer. Be bold, be courageous, because that's what you have to do in this world, because the system is not necessarily set up for us and the way our minds work, because our minds do function a little bit differently than some of our counterparts. And so you have to be bold and courageous, and it's okay. It's okay to kind of step out of what society expects you to be. So don't worry about that. And, you know, surround yourself with people who support you. And if they don't support you, move on. It's okay to move on.
Thank you guys so much for coming tonight. Before we move on to our next set of panelists, going back to the mentor report, I highly encourage any of the girls out there to reach out to any of the panelists tonight. Their emails were in that information overview link in the Google Drive. These women are all amazing mentors, so please feel free to reach out to any of them. Thank you, ladies, so much for coming tonight.
Thank you, Talia, for inviting us, and we are very happy to connect with any one of you who is on the line and to support you guys and be those mentors that we've been talking about. So thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Reach
Thank
out.
you. Wow. I'm sorry that ran a little bit over, but oh, there we go. Okay. So, hi, if you guys want to just introduce yourselves, say a little bit about yourselves.
So I'm unmuted, so I'll go first. So my name's Jen Spiro Kenny. I don't use the husband's last name at work anymore. So I was a Stevens engineer. I have my undergrad bachelor's and master's degree in computer engineering from Stevens, which I think was the best thing I did because of how their curriculum is built. And you've heard that from other Stevens engineers that we have to do a little bit of everything in school, and I got my feet wet in a whole bunch of places that I didn't know I had an interest in or I had no interest in as an undergrad, but I use those every day at work. So my background is in network information systems, which is a fancy way of saying network engineering. So my first 2 jobs out of college really focused on networking and connecting us from a core down to the switch or the access point that you guys are using at home to connect. So I did that for a university, and I was there for about 10 years, and I got to get my feet into all different sorts of networking, which is why I had stayed for so long. I was not the type of student, I did well in math, but chemistry was not a good fit. And I really couldn't stay and do one thing every day, all day. So being in a university setting for me was really good because I could get up and go see the problem in a lot of locations and go try and fix the issue. So I took out of that I didn't want to be in a big corporate environment like some of my friends were, where I was solely responsible for one subject within a corporate environment. So I really got to do all different things. But from that, and from what you guys had just heard about mentors at work and taking on different projects, we were a small information technology group within that university. So anything that kind of came along, my boss usually would end up getting tasked with fixing, even if it had nothing to do with us. So in different ways, those projects ended up on my desk. So that was really interesting. And if you had told me 2 years before I left that I would have left, I would have been like, no, that's not happening. I'm retiring from here. But because of some management changes, I was faced with, okay, do I want to stay or am I going to go because this guy's staying? So I went to look at what I really wanted to do. I looked at working in the K-12 environment. I looked at working in corporate and going into more of a focus in security, since that's what I had been doing a lot of at work, and I had enjoyed that as well. And I really got down to that I also did not want to be focused on one item, and that I really did enjoy seeing how everything worked together and having that background on what was going on in the environment I was in. So when I was looking for jobs, I came across a management position at a university that was also local to my house, so no move was required. And I, at the time, had a 16-month-old daughter, so that was a big thing, staying near family for us and where my husband's job was. So I took this role that I'm in today, now 4 years later, which I really didn't know if I was gonna love, and I love it because it's the same thing. I don't do the exact same thing every day. We get into all the different types of business that universities do and supporting different items. I deal with students on a daily basis that work for our department and work for our group, as well as everyday students that are coming in with different problems that we have to try and figure out what's going on, or what technologies we can bring to campus to help alleviate some of their issues. Even if I'm not the one working on it at the end of the day, it is nice to be able to see how all different parts of a business work together. So that's what you have for me.
Okay, I'm Lorraine Kunz. I also am a Stevens graduate, much earlier than I'm sure Jen is, but I am a director of operations for a division of Aerojet Rocketdyne, which is in New Jersey, called RDAY. We design and manufacture basically pressure vessels, tanks for aerospace applications. I am, in my position, I am responsible for the entire manufacturing facility, as well as safety, health, and environmental, and procurement, manufacturing, engineering. I think that's it. So I have an organization, but we're a small division. We only have about 60 people, but we do a lot in this small division. And I have about 30 people that work for me. My experience before that was very limited. I've been with the company for 32 years, but in a progressive change of responsibility within the organization. I started out as a young engineer, as a project engineer, moved up to program manager, and somehow I slid across to manufacturing. Never in my life would I have thought I'd been responsible for a manufacturing facility. So it's been kind of an interesting trip. And I have most of the people that work for me, actually probably all except for one admin, are men. So it's an interesting environment for a woman, but I've learned a lot along the way.
So thank you guys for sharing a little bit about yourselves. But what experience did you have that led you to this like supervisory or like managerial side of engineering, and like what made you leave like active field, I guess?
Well, I'm still unmuted, so I'll go first. Well, I didn't actually actively move into a management position. Kind of just happened as I said, we're a very small company. We used to be independently owned and kind of were bought by a couple different aerospace companies along the way. So we were transitioning a lot. As a program manager, I was the only program manager, so I had oversight for a lot of different programs within the organization. I knew a lot of what was going on. I actually was asked to participate in and being the main person looking to hire somebody in this position. And somebody I worked with said, you could do this job. And I was like, really? You think I could do this job? And I sat and I thought about it, and I said, you know what? I have as much knowledge and as much experience, and as the person who left the position. And I sat down with the general manager at the time, and he said, absolutely. And the next thing I knew, I was in the position. And I wasn't managing people before that, so it was really kind of interesting. I went from managing no one to being responsible for a union of about 20 people and manufacturing engineers. So it's not something I chose. It's not something I actually really ever thought a place I would ever have been. But I find managing people a great experience. You know, you learn a lot from the people that work for you. They learn a lot from you, obviously, too. But it's really a good place to be. It's really an interesting, you know, way to learn. I would recommend people. I would recommend not jumping as far as I did from just being an individual contributor way into, you know, having half the organization working for me. It would have been a little easier if I had a little management experience, but because of the environment I was in, it's the way it worked out, and it worked out for me. And it happened right before we were bought by the first large aerospace company that bought out, and it was actually a customer of ours. So I was transitioning to a management position, and at the same time we were bought out by a large company, and I was the main contributor, the main interface with the company's transition team. So it was really, you know, it was like I was thrown into the fire really quickly. So it was very exciting, and I learned a lot quickly.
So I did not necessarily think I would be where I am today, probably 6-7 years ago. About 3 years before I left my previous institution, we got a new CIO. In that amount of time, we had a little bit of change within information technology, and I had realized that I had been managing up of my boss for several years. And so I was a little bit more comfortable when I had found the posting that this was going to be okay and that it would be an okay fit. And what actually ended up happening was that my previous director, who's really who I think of as my mentor, though he doesn't know it, his boss was my current CIO now. So he had left, and then we had some management changes. And when I was looking for jobs, I actually found a different posting than what I had applied for. And I had called him and I was like, how is this university? How is everything going? And the fact that my phone number was still in his cell phone 3 years after he had left our institution, to me was a good thing to start with. But because he knew me and he knew my work ethic, he really encouraged me to apply, even though I didn't think I checked every box for the job posting as it was, because I hadn't previously managed people. I had previously managed some student teams. In my position, I'm responsible for 5 full-time employees, 5 part-time employees, and we oversee about 30 students from there. So I was a little shaky on if this was going to be a good fit, and I got from the posting that my background in networking really was what that posting wanted. And I didn't see how my background was exactly what they were looking for. When I got to this institution, I found out exactly what was going on. The person I was reporting to, that was the director, didn't have very much technical background. And so the user support team and the networking and server group couldn't really talk. They didn't really have that middleman that had the language skills between them to meet in the middle. So I really was hired as that mediator. And so to me, it was one of those leaps of faith that connections and mentors from the past really make you understand what you're capable of. So I went from managing 0 employees to 5 employees, and it wasn't too bad. I've had 1 retirement, 1 person left us for an internal position. Nobody has quit on me. So I'm doing well.
So, in what ways do you guys still find that you use your engineering degrees?
I'll jump on that one. My project management was not something that the team I joined was really so all about. And and they really take on every once in a while when they're like, why do you love Excel? Why do you love project? And like, sometimes I've just got Gantt charts up for myself. And that was something that I learned in one of the general engineering classes that I had to take, that I really took and ran with, that I didn't necessarily also realize I was utilizing on a daily basis. There's other parts, that thermodynamics and some other classes that I had to take to really understand that, like, as soon as you get a heating issue with a network switch in a closet that has no other airflow, that you really need to become good friends with the physical plant guys, because that equipment is key. So there's a lot of things that I learned in some of these general engineering classes that I didn't ever think were going to be useful. I'm not very good in chemistry. My husband's actually a Stevens engineer as well, and we took a couple of these classes together. I'm like, I'm never using thermodynamics again. And then there's things that came up and I was like, oh, I get this. But there's other parts of that engineering that like kind of drove me to different things. I've taken some classes with not outside contractors, but different vendors that we utilize that were free continuing ed classes for contractors, that I would go and learn about grounding. And the vendor would be like, why do you want to come see this? I was like, because I want to walk in and know the contractor did it right. So if I learn how to do this, then I will be able to say that this is done correctly. And I think that all came from some of my engineering classes, of like being able to understand and verify for myself how things worked.
Yeah, and I think in my case, a lot of it, if I have a team of engineers, they're trying to resolve a problem, they come to me with some proposed solutions, and we start talking about it. A lot of what my job is, you know, I'm not the smartest person on my team. I have people that have expertise in particular areas, but I'm one of the people that have to sit there and ask the right questions to get to the right solution. So, you know, if we're sitting around in a group and brainstorming, that's where my technical expertise comes. Well, why didn't you consider this? And, you know, it might get them to a different solution. It might get them to think about maybe how it could work differently, or how we could fix the problem we're addressing. I also, you know, interface with the design engineering team and the program managers all the time. And, you know, we get new product in for development. I'm part of that team, and just brainstorming how we're gonna be best designing it so we can manufacture it in the most efficient, with the best quality. You know, having a team of people, whether they're managers or individual, the engineers working the program, being able to talk through those steps to get to the best solution. I think that's where I think it's important that you have a technical degree in my field anyway. For anybody really, you know, getting an engineering degree, a lot of it is developing your logical thinking. It really is, and that's what's so important in any engineering field, I think.
Yeah, so that's all the questions that I had for you guys. I don't know if anyone else has any other questions out there. Please feel free to submit them. Otherwise, that's the end of our event tonight. So thank you everyone for coming and staying through to the end. I know we ran a little bit over, but please feel free to reach out to any of these wonderful women who decided to spend their evening with us and share some of their experience. After this Zoom ends, there should be a pop-up little Google form link that you guys can fill out. That way we know how we did, and yeah, so that way we can grow from this event in the future. Do you have any advice for schools to encourage girls to pursue and persevere in engineering?
What was the question, Talia? I'm sorry.
Do you have any advice to encourage girls to pursue and persevere in engineering?
Well, my advice is always really be open to what you can do that you might not think you would have been able to do. I mean, if I had you got to be very optimistic, and you got to learn from everybody who teaches you, but you really have to be open to new fields, new areas to pursue. And I think that's really important. You know, if somebody had not mentioned to me, I think you could do this job, I would have never really considered it. And, you know, I'm glad he did. And I'm glad I spoke up and mentioned it to my manager at the time. So, you know, I just think being open to any opportunity that comes your way.
I agree with that. I think
And
to
then, like,
me,
how do we? No, sorry.
I think to me, I knew pretty early on that I wanted to go into a technical field, but I don't know that I assigned the word engineering to that early on. And so to really understand that you have, I don't know how many of us have spoken tonight, but we all started from a different place and ended up somewhere else. Engineering is a word that has so many different meanings.
Yeah, and the question actually specifically asked for schools to encourage girls to pursue engineering. And like she said, like she might not have attached engineering to it, but I think starting it young, like finding that passion really early, I think is important. I don't know if you guys want to touch on any of that.
I mean, I went to an engineering high school, so I don't know how they could have done that better. But I know that like some of the robotics items and things you guys have been involved in, that's just things that are important for schools to have or to show that are available. My 5-year-old isn't in school yet, so I don't know how they're going to do that.
Okay. So thank you guys all for coming. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Thank you for spending your time with us. That's all I have for tonight. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.